Boom, what's up, everybody? This is McAllister's podcast. I'm your host, as always, Coleman McAllister. Another super solo episode today. I apologize for being late. I was in the bathroom taking a massive, sloppy shit. True story as to why I'm late. I know I said I was going to start at 7, and I'm starting a little late, so I apologize for that. I know usually I multi-stream on YouTube and X. I've been having issues with my Steam or my streamer thing, so that is not quite working out how I want to, but that's okay. I will put it up on that in the audios afterwards. There's a lot going on, so I thought I would give my thoughts on that, because that's what we do. That's what I do here. I just arrogantly come on and give my thoughts on what's going on, and that's what I do. Okay, so one of the things that has happened that I've found very interesting is this, and this is kind of last week's news, so everybody kind of knows what's going on. Everybody knows the jig. Elon Musk seems to have separated himself from Donald Trump. This is by no means surprising, in the sense that, these are two people who have massive egos. Elon, I feel like, is a little more humble, but there are plenty of instances where it's just kind of like, what the fuck are you doing, Elon, right? I feel like this was the kind of one of those relationships that was destined to fail, right? So anyways, Elon, let's just read the tweet. And the thing that I find very interesting about this is, I checked it because I was trying to find the original link today, and it appears that Elon has actually deleted this off his Twitter. So I found that very interesting that he was like, okay, what's going on here, Elon, right? Time to drop the really big bomb. This is from the 5th, so 4 days ago. And like I said, this is deleted now. Real Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day, Donald J. Trump. This isn't surprising. I posted this on Twitter and Facebook. I think the most surprising thing about this is that people are surprised by this. Yeah, of course, the guy who was friends with Epstein, whether or not you think he actually did any of the allegational type of stuff, which he probably did, but even if you're gonna assume that he didn't, he's probably on there in some capacity, right? Come on, the guy, there are literally photos of him on his plane, right? There's no way he's not in those files to some capacity. And everybody knew this. I remember when they were talking about actually releasing the Epstein files, I was just so skeptical of it. I'm like, there's just no way that Donald Trump is going to actually allow for these files to get released. I think it was a big selling point during his campaign. I think he really, he used that to his advantage to really get the populace going, right? But with so many things that Trump has promised, they just haven't come to fruition, or the things that he has promised have just not been going the way he intended. And we'll get to the LA stuff later. But I was talking to my fiance about this earlier. This reminds me so much of the Kendrick Drake stuff, I'm a big fan of Kendrick. I think overall he's a good guy, but I think it's worth being critical of this aspect that, you're someone that sits on information, especially something as devastating as this person is, molesting children, having sex with underage women or boys or whatever, right? Children. And you're just going to sit on that because, I don't know, it's better for you, or I get the thing that's you don't really have enough evidence, whatever. But I don't know. I think if you're I think it's better to say that and have it come out later that's not true versus the other way around. Because the other way around means that you're just kind of letting somebody continue to do this without any public recognition, right? like continue to do malevolent, terrible, awful things to children, and nobody's aware of it, right? I think that's a lot better than the other way around, where somebody's falsely accused, and then you could go through some kind of process where you figure out that that's not the case, right? And I think the same thing's happening here with Elon. If it's true that he knows about this, like what? You've been in office for how many days? Let's say he found this out. I mean, look, the only way that this doesn't look bad for Elon is if he found it out the day that he posted this tweet, which, if this is true, is highly unlikely. If he had known about this, he had probably known about it for a while, right? So you're kind of just like showing that you are also guilty in a sense, right? Like I said, like you sit in this information, you don't really do anything about it, whatever, right? And I think that looks bad on you. I don't think I've ever heard accusations about that. Maybe there was one time where I did, but like the source wasn't really reliable, and I didn't have that person on the podcast again, right? So like I kind of get that in a sense where it's like, you kind of just hear something and it's like, okay, like I haven't really like looked into this, right? But there's something about like seeing Trump on the Epstein list where it's like, holy fucking shit, right? Or Kendrick, like hearing all these allegations, like the guy Drake who like in his mid-20s kissed a 16-year-old girl on stage, like it's pretty easy to connect those dots and be like, if you hear one other thing, you'd be like, okay, I need to tell people about this, because I mean, this is the behavior this man has displayed, right? But like, no, you're not going to drop it until this other person pisses you off, and then you're going to be like, okay, now I'm going to drop this bombshell of information. It's just not very moral and right. And yeah, I look, the whole Doge thing, I think it had good intentions, but it ultimately fell on its face, right? I think, even me, who's an anarchist and is very like skeptical of every time government actually says it's going to like trim itself down, it's like, it's not like government isn't really in the game to like make themselves smaller. Like they always want to do the opposite. They always want to make themselves bigger. Like we'll get into the Cash Patel stuff, but like, this is why I remain an anarchist. This is why I titled the episode, "The State Always Wins," because the people in power will do everything they can to continue being in power. I do not believe this whole idea of like, oh, we're going to have a good Samaritan come in and he's going to actually change shit up. If anything has been obvious since Trump's first term, is that that's not possible. You had a guy, Trump, who, let's say that his intention, let's just even give him the benefit of the doubt that his intentions were true. He was really like, okay, I'm really going to come in. I'm really going to drain the swamp. He was unable to do so. I don't think anyone is able to do so because it's such a complex and corrupt system. You get in there, you find some bombshell truth. You're like, oh, I'm going to release this. And then like, basically somebody's pointing a gun at your head. Like, and this is kind of the thing about Elon. Like, I wonder if that part of that went to him deleting his tweet is like, maybe he turned around, he found a red dot in his head, and somebody's like, okay, hey, you need to shut the fuck up. Or we're going to like, it's one thing if you are going to be the martyr, but if you have family members, if you have innocent people that are by you that could possibly suffer from that too, like, yeah, man, you're gonna play ball, and in that case, part of you can't even blame them, but at the same time, like, they got into the game, right? Like they got into the game of politics. Like this is like I never understand like when an anarchist like is like, okay, I'm gonna run for an elected official. Like you're not really an anarchist of that. Like I don't know. I feel like that's almost kind of fake anarchism. It's like, okay, like you reject the state, but now you're going to participate in the state, assumingly you're going to accept money from the state as a salary. And like, how much are you really going to be able to get done? Not a lot. Even like on a city or state level, like you're just not going to be able to get that much done. there's so many different components deep-seated that contribute to this, right? Anyway, so that whole thing happened, and I think it's really funny, just like all the memes and everything, just say, Trump and Elon breaking up, like, what was it, Milo tweeted, like, this is why you can't have two dads or something like that. I thought that was fucking hilarious. And that was like wild too. It's like Milo coming out of nowhere, just fucking like, okay. Like, where the fuck you been, dude? Okay, let's switch gears here. Let's talk about the whole Kash Patel thing, something that also has been prominently talked about. I mean, there's just so much that's been going on. It's almost hard to even talk about this, even fit everything in one episode. But Kash Patel recently went on JRE, the Joe Rogan Experience, and talked about a lot of different things. The first thing, before we even get into the Epstein stuff, which is like kind of the viral thing, I wanted to even just talk about, and I didn't really pull up a clip because I don't know, you don't really need to. It's the same story that like you always hear from people who are against the fentanyl stuff, like how easily it kills people and like all these tragic events, right? And I'm not like trying to dumb that down or like say that that's not important or impactful, but I think it's always so statist to see a problem and assume that what we need to do is the exact same thing that made this a problem in the first place, which is the legal status of drugs, of these drugs, of quote unquote, I hate even like saying this, but like quote unquote hard drugs, right? Heroin, meth, fentanyl, which is basically, which is just an opioid, right? Despite the fact that like every study that's ever been done points to the opposite of like what these people preach. Like, if you make drugs legalized, people tend to do them a lot less. Alcohol, maybe it's different, but I don't even know if it's different with alcohol though, because there's still legal precedents. Like, look at the bar thing, right? Like, I truly believe if bars were able to be open 24/7, that you would not see this excess drinking. You would not see like this late night party of like people staying up at that bar till 2-3 in the morning, going out and driving drunk. Like, I just feel like that wouldn't even be a thing. The reason that's a thing is because we've had this legal precedent that, right? So even that's not entirely free. But like, if you look at cannabis among youth in Colorado, when they legalized it, we've talked about this plenty of times, like, it dropped dramatically. The rate of cannabis use dropped dramatically. And I don't see any reason to think that if you did the same thing with fentanyl, that this would have the effect. Look, it's not like people are just buying straight up fentanyl and just ingesting straight up fentanyl, right? And he does even point this out on the podcast, like, there is a medical use for fentanyl, right? But like, you want to target fentanyl. And this is almost, it's just, in my mind, it's just so easy. Like, if you want there to be no fentanyl, then legalize the drugs that the fentanyl's in, right? Like, have there be like, I don't even like regulations, but that's a way better system than, it getting mixed in with stuff, coke, whatever, and having people die. Like, that's a way better system than that. And give that power to the people. And like, if in a free market, if a company wants to sell cocaine or methamphetamine or ecstasy, there's way less incentive for them to spike it with fentanyl in a legal market, because like, you want your customers to come back, right? Like, but then when you have the cartel who is just mass producing all this product into an illegal thing that they know that because it's a black market, they can A, get away with shit, and B, they can make a ton of money off it, right? I of course they're incentivized to do that. Like, there's no connection with their customers, right? It's not like you go to a storefront, you're like, hey, I want to buy cocaine, I want to buy meth, I want to buy ecstasy, Molly, whatever. It's not like that. It's a mass distributor pushing out to whoever, and then they just push it out to whoever, and then whoever, and then whoever. And because it's illegal, because it's in the shit, right? People are just going to keep buying it. Like, my point is, like, nobody's just buying fentanyl. They're buying these other drugs that are already popularized, a big part because of it being illegal. And, I really hate this too, because like these people like Kash Patel and people who are like, pro DEA and pro state and stuff, they'll paint these, they'll paint these like stories, these like truly tragic stories of like, a kid popping Molly and overdosing, and then he has to like call the parents or whatever, which I'm sorry, I really I don't want to like put that in him, but I really doubt that the director of the FBI is calling parents and telling them that their kid overdosed. If he is, good for him, I guess. But like, I'm like, if he's really as busy as he is with the Epstein stuff, like, what, you tell me he has time to call the parents? Like, I highly doubt that. But even if that's the case, like, wouldn't it just be so like, if you're really operating in that space, can't you just realize that this is so much of a bigger problem that like, you can't trying to track down all the fentanyl that's in all these different drugs, all these different markets. Like, you're really going to try to tackle that whole fucking thing and ruin people's lives in the process instead of doing the sensible thing, which is just legalizing it. And then A, rates of use go down, and B, if somebody wants coke or Molly or meth, they don't have fucking fentanyl in it because it's A, regulated, or B, the incentive is not there. So anyway, I mean, that whatever, that's low hanging fruit. But the episode started like that, and like every time somebody brings up the fentanyl thing, I just can't help but roll my eyes and be like, okay, not even roll my eyes, because like it is a serious problem. But then adhere to this format that we've been doing for the war on drugs format that we've been doing for the last 50 plus years, that has not worked at all, right? Anyways, the big thing about this interview that everybody's been talking about, rightfully so, is his take on the Jeff Epstein stuff, which is honestly comical and disappointing at the same time. Because he's really telling us with a straight face all these things that are just like nobody believes him. The idea that Epstein wasn't murdered, that he actually killed himself. The idea that we don't have all this footage. The idea that, and it's really convenient how like, it's like, oh, you guys are going to see the tape right around the time that AI is really becoming a thing, right? Like, maybe it's kind of a far-fetched thing, but I think Joe Rogan actually brings up like a really good point later in this. Like, it would actually be pretty easy in 2025 to like remake that in AI. Like, fuck, I see AI videos of Jeff Epstein smoking weed with people. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not that crazy to think that like somebody could recreate that with AI. And then like his response is like, oh, but like it wouldn't be that good. And it's like, dude, either you do know exactly what you're talking about, which I think is probably really the case, or you're too stupid to be the director of the FBI. One of the two, right? But and one other thing I wanted to say before this, like, I'm not someone who like watches or listens to Joe Rogan on the regular, but every once in a while, the motherfucker reels me back in. And when I saw Kash Patel, I was like, God damn it, I gotta listen to this episode. And look, Joe, I mean, he probably wasn't as hard as he could have been, but I also understand like being a podcaster, like there are times where I've had interviews where like I'm heavily disagreeing with what the other person says, but like you gotta kind of think of the context of the whole interview. Like if you do the interview just attacking him the whole time, that's just shit content, right? But even so, like he pressed him enough, And it was just a reminder, like, this is why this motherfucker's the GOAT. This is why Rogan's the GOAT, because, like, after all these years, episode 2334, the motherfucker still got it. It's fucking crazy. So, anyways, I don't know if it's the fucking On It or the whatever the fuck he takes. But let's just play this. I don't know how much of this we'll actually play, because it's like all of it's like a pretty long clip. I thought we would just respond to this. So,
and look, let's just get to it, because I know it's on people's minds. Epstein, right? The reason people are pissed off about that is the same thing, right? 20 years ago, or whenever it was, 2006, 7, 8, Epstein gets his sweetheart plea deal, right? Right. After committing the most horrific crimes on planet Earth, right? I wasn't in power there. I wasn't in place there. I had, nothing to do with it. But people were rightfully pissed. I mean, this guy was committing the most grotesque acts you can against children. And the media spins up about it. Many in the media protected him. Why? Because of his relationships, who he knew, who his bankers were, who his colleagues were, who was on the island and stuff like that. Some pretty powerful human beings. And so when you peel back the layer, and then what happened? The Trump administration, the last go-around, decided, no, we're not going to let that go. We're going to investigate him, right? They charge him, they indict him, and he's awaiting trial. And I've said it, Dan Bongino said it, we've reviewed all the information, and the American public is going to get as much as we can release. He killed himself. Do you think, let's play out the logical conclusion.
There's something about that I think that's really revealing already. When you use a term like as much as we can release, it's a bit suspicious. A bit suspicious. And he talks about this later, like how he doesn't want to dox the victims or whatever. Fine. I think Tim Dillon made a very good point in his response. Like, he could just blur that out pretty easily and like still show the perpetrators, right? But like, I think even so, like, this kind of goes back to what I was just saying. Like, I think it's better to err on the side of revealing the information, even if this affects people and traumatizes people. And you also have to think, like, a lot of this happened probably 10 plus years ago. So even if these people are children, they're probably adults by now. And I'm not saying that, like, flippantly. Like, this is a very serious thing. Like, people I've known who have been through those kind of events, like, it is very traumatic to relive that. But I think you could make a very good argument that knowing the truth, knowing these other people, these other perpetrators who are prominent figures out in the world who could continually be doing this, I think that is far more important than just, keeping people's names out, redacting names, right? And like I said, and like Tim Dillon said, like, I think there's probably a way you could do it in between, right? But the problem is when you have something like this, or when you have a government agency being the mediator, there's nothing in my mind that says that someone's actually going to do the right thing in that. They're going to protect their own interests, and they're going to be able to do it because they're a system that relies on theft and force, and they can just do whatever the fuck they want, basically. Okay, let's keep playing.
Conclusion of this. Do you think that myself, Bongino, and others would participate in hiding information about Epstein's grotesque activities, or
yes? Yeah, for the same reason that everyone else has before you, dude. Like, trust me, bro. Trust me. Why would I do this? Me? Me? Look at my face. Me? You think I would do that? You think I would hide something like that? Get that out of here, man. I'm a good guy. I'm Kash Patel. I'm not white.
You think we would also participate in not prosecuting people we had evidence to prosecute people on? Because the problem is there's been...
If they're your boss, yeah.
Like 15 years...
And if they have a gun to your family's head, yeah.
...of people coming in and creating fictions about this that doesn't exist. Where's the videotape of an Epstein Island of X, Y, and Z committing these frauds? Why haven't you given it to us? Do you really think I wouldn't give that to you? If it...
Yes! And look, we know there are videotapes. We know that. We've heard that. We've been hearing that for years. This was literally how he did his gig. He videotaped people having sex with minors and used it as blackmail. And that's how he got away with the shit. Like, if there's what? Okay, so either there were tapes and he destroyed them, or there are tapes. Or this third fantasy option where tapes? There weren't tapes. I mean, Eric Weinstein talked about this. He did. I remember back in the day, like 2020, 2019, he did this whole podcast talking about the time he met Jeffrey Epstein and all the paintings. He had the painting of Bill Clinton in the dress on the wall. And I mean, like, people have been talking about this for a long time. The fact that they were tapes that he used to blackmail people. And Cash is really going to turn around and just, no, that didn't happen. No. Come on.
Existed. I'm working my ass off along with the leadership at the Bureau and DOJ to get you what we're allowed to give you. And you're going to get the video of the cell. And you're going to see for yourself. And
he's been saying this for weeks, by the way. And you know what? I don't think we're ever going to get this video. Fake or real? AI or not real? Or AI or not AI? I do not think we're ever going to... I will say this right now. I don't think we are ever going to get this video. I think he's saying this. I think he's saying it to appease people. But eventually, it's like the 48 hours news cycle, right? In a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, people are just going to forget that he said this. And he's going to continue to be the director of the FBI. People are going to ask him, hey, what's going on? He's just going to say, no comment, no comment, no comment. And it won't matter because he can't get voted out of that position. And he's just going to keep doing it. That's my prediction. If this man has been able to lie 3 different times about the fact that Epstein didn't kill himself and that there are no tapes from the Epstein Island, yeah, I don't think he's going to release shit. Just my prediction. I don't know, but
we will never be able to convince everyone.
Okay, let's get into that. So, what did you think before you got in office? Did you think that Epstein was murdered?
No.
No suspicion at all of it?
But I have a different background, right?
Right.
So I was a public defender back in the day. I used to spend a lot of time in jails and a lot of time in segregated housing units, SHUs as we call them, right? And so, and I've known people that have committed suicide in these cells. And I know how you get in, how you get out, who works the system. And so the way, based on public information at the time, that he ended up, the pictures and him hanging himself, I was like, man, that guy killed himself. There's just no way that you could have run an op and had people go into that cell and not have any video of it and not have any people come out and say, hey, yeah, I saw that guy. He shouldn't have been there, the guard or this guy. There's just no access points into places like this in the detention center he was in, which I've been in.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but what I was told, what I'd read, was that the guards were not paying attention or were sleeping.
Well,
right?
And in short order, you'll see it.
Is that correct?
Well, it's hard to surmise that from a video, right? Like,
right.
Where they and look, do guards doze off on the night shift? Yeah. But no one can get in to the cell. And if they had gotten in to the cell, you would see it.
But
what? The boss, somebody that's deeply embedded, like the shit, it's a system of key cards. You told me it's like a padded lock key. Even then, they could have a copy of the key. It's so dishonest to say that there's no way. If you really wanted to sell this, at least say that there's a minute possibility. Then, like, maybe we could take you at your word. But if you're going to say, like, no, this is impossible because when I was doing XYZ, we could tell. And then when we saw the photos, we could tell. Okay, how about you release the photos? Look, release the photos. Put like viewer discretion advised thing at the beginning, whatever. In the age of the internet and TikTok, you're not going to shock anyone. We're watching videos of people getting blown to bits in Gaza. I think we can handle some suicide photographs or videos or whatever. Then release it. If it's really that obvious, release it. But no, he can't do that. He's just got to be the mouthpiece. And, you know.
We were told that the cameras were down.
Well, I don't know who said that.
But that was in the news.
We're giving you all the footage we have.
So why wasn't that released like immediately? Why did this speculation escalate?
I think you'd have to ask whoever the Attorney General back then was, Bill Barr.
Did you ever see, do you remember that HBO autopsy show? Dr. Michael Baden, he's a famous forensic
I don't think I've seen
scientist. So he's a pathologist, and he reviewed the case, and it was his determination that it was a homicide because of the way his neck was broken. And what he said was it was indicative of a ligature strangulation. And it was because of the positioning on the neck where the marks were, that it wasn't indicative of someone hanging by their weight, which had been higher on the chin. And there's a specific break of the bones and the vertebrae that's consistent with someone who is just strangled to death.
I haven't seen it. I'll definitely take a look at it because that's part of my job.
You haven't seen that?
The report on that? No, I haven't looked at that.
Did you see any...
And here's the thing. Either this guy's lying, which I think is the more likely prediction, or he's unqualified for his job. Look, if you're director if one of your main jobs is like, we need to unlock these files, these Epstein files, and like, you know, really all these people who were involved, and just this like mystery that could really confirm, you know, what the true intentions of the government are, right? Like, do they really want to show this information to the people, or do they want to just cover their own ass? He would know this information. He would know the different accounts, the different arguments of people saying, "Hey, this is actually like this is actually what happened." Like, you could have like the theory of like, oh, this is where his neck would have been broken. This is where it would have been broken if it was a homicide, right? Look, like during COVID, right? There's a government narrative of COVID. I do not believe that these government officials who passed down these mandates, told us what they did about COVID, I do not believe that they did not know that it was possible that they were full of shit. That they hadn't even heard a different argument for it. You cannot convince me of that. You just can't. That not only that happened with one person, that with a series, hundreds of people who were working for the government who just said this, there's no way they didn't. There's no way they hadn't at least heard it. You know why? Because Joe Rogan and other podcasters were talking about it. There's no way that they were living in such an echo chamber, in such a bubble, that they hadn't at least heard these other explanations. And the same exact thing is happening here with Kash Patel. He is lying through his teeth, saying he's like, oh, I don't know about that. I haven't heard about that. Yes, you do, motherfucker. And if it's true that you don't, you should not have this job. If that's the case, you are terrible at your job. You should resign. Anyway.
Was there any other autopsy done other than the official one?
Not to my knowledge, but if there was, you'll get it. And that's what we're doing.
See if you can find that Dr. Michael Baden thing.
Yeah. No,
did you remember that show, the HBO show?
No.
Pretty cool show.
Yeah,
so this guy, Dr. Michael Baden, he had a long career of catching murderers, you know, exhuming bodies, finding trace amounts of poisons, different kinds of things. And it was a crazy show, like all these wild ways.
Well, I love watching shows, and I spend a lot of time on planes. So.
Yeah, it was an old show. It was a show like from the early 2000s, I believe. But this guy was like, you know, this very well-respected forensic scientist who would analyze these bodies, and it was his determination that he was murdered.
Yeah. And my job, going back to the core of what I've been doing since I studied Russiagate, was to get, and is to get everybody the information.
When did you get here? Epstein's autopsy points to homicide. Pathologist hired by brother claims. New York City medical examiner strongly disputed the claim that the evidence from the autopsy suggested strangulation. So let's go to by the way, this is the New York Times, and they never lie. The private pathologist Dr. Michael Baden said in the morning TV show Fox and Friends, Mr. Epstein experienced a number of injuries.
You know, and like this is something too. Like you can't just make the autopsy public information. Maybe it is. I don't know. I haven't actually looked. I don't know if it is public information. Let's assume it's not. You can't just give us the autopsy. Like that doesn't, like, look, he's talking about like revealing people, like doxing people, whatever. Like I get that. An autopsy wouldn't do any of that. An autopsy, like that would be a very key piece of information that would really settle all this. Like settle this dispute, right? Like, did he kill himself? Was he murdered? Like that would be a very easy key piece of information to just give out, make it public. But it's obvious why it won't do that. So,
among them a broken bone in his neck that are extremely unusual in suicidal hangings and could occur much more commonly in homicidal strangulation. I think the evidence points to homicide rather than suicide, said Dr. Baden, who observed the autopsy done by city officials. Dr. Baden, a former New York City medical examiner and a Fox News contributor, said, I have not seen in 50 years where that occurred in suicidal hanging case. Findings by Dr. Baden were strongly disputed by the city's chief medical examiner, Dr. Barbara Sampson, who previously ruled that Mr. Epstein's death on August 10th in the Metropolitan Correctional Center was a suicide. I stand firmly behind our determination of the cause and manner of death in this case, Dr. Sampson said in the interview on Wednesday. She added, in general, fractures of the hyoid bone and cartilage can be seen in suicides and homicides. The hyoid bone is near the Adam's apple. Dr. Sampson also dismissed Dr. Baden's contention that the circumstances around Mr. Epstein's death suggested other people may have been involved. She said her office had done a complete investigation, taking into consideration information gathered by law enforcement in making the determination.
So this is a perfect example of going back to my public defender and prosecutor days. Mm-hmm. This is what we call a war of experts. You can always find someone to come in and say the opposite.
Right.
And I used to do it all the time. I mean, I represented some of the...
So make the information public. How about instead of just having your own experts, or in this case, you, an expert, a quote, unquote, expert. I don't believe that, but let's just say, for the sake of argument. How about instead of just saying all this, how about you just make it public? Make it public so then people, like, this is the same thing that happened during COVID. Like, you're gatekeeping the information. And you're like, trust me, bro. Just, we'll show you. I'm not going to tell you when, but we'll show you. Just trust me, bro.
Worst humans that you can possibly imagine on Earth. Literally. The guys that were trafficking children from Mexico into America. And you could put up a professional expert to say, and this is what's going to go on forever. And my job is not the forever. My job is to get you absolutely everything that we can give you. And that's what we're going to do.
When did you become aware of this video that showed that no one had gone in and out of the cell?
Recently.
So why was it recent, though? I mean, if this death was... How long ago was this death? 2 years?
Couple...
2019?
2019.
Oh, really? Why? Time flies. So, 6 years.
Well, again, that's part of what I'm going to try to answer for you.
Jeffrey Epstein jail CCTV erased by technical errors. Whoopsies.
Yeah.
But you see how anybody on the outside... I mean, this is like a perfect storm.
Yeah.
For something. Can you pull that article up so we can read what it says, Jamie? U.S. prosecutor said the jail mistakenly saved footage from the wrong cell. Sorry. Epstein, a convicted sex offender, first tried to kill himself in July last year and hanged himself in jail.
Hang on.
Yep.
Reread that line.
That he first tried to kill himself in July of last year. Yeah.
How much of the American public do you think knows that?
I didn't know that until right now.
There you go.
Maybe I heard it and forgot. Did you ever hear it, Jamie?
Well, that's why he was on Suicide Watch, I think.
Oh, okay.
So a guy...
hanged himself in jail in August while serving
I knew that. Yeah, he was on Suicide Watch.
trial on federal sex trafficking.
And look, let's be real here, right? Like, maybe he wanted to commit suicide for the same reason he might have gotten murdered, right? Like, is that like, those things can be connected, you know? It's not like mutually exclusive. I don't know.
In charge, he pleaded not guilty to abusing dozens of girls, some as young as 14. Yeah. Soon after Epstein's death in August, two of the CCTV cameras outside his cell had malfunctioned and were being examined by the FBI. Found semi-conscious in his prison cell with injuries on his neck on 25 of July. After this incident, he's placed on suicide watch.
I'm not saying every single camera in the place was working. I'm saying we've got footage and you're getting it. And then you can make up your own mind. And the theories.
Okay, and here's another thing. If all these cameras weren't working, maybe you should address that. Maybe you should address like, hey, we know that some of these cameras are faulty. That's on us. We're gonna do XYZ. Can't remember where the cameras. XYZ. We're gonna make sure that something like this does not happen again. But no, because that would be taking ownership, right? And look, I know he's the FBI director. He doesn't necessarily own this cell, right? But there's a hierarchy, right? There's a hierarchy. He's at the top of the hierarchy. You're not telling me that like there wouldn't be something that he could do, like more training, more like, okay, we're gonna divert some funds to IT work, like whatever. Like, again, that's kind of just a small thing, but I just think it's, he doesn't want to take ownership.
These can continue, but my job.
So you became aware of this footage recently.
The ones that we're looking at, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, but this is like an article from quite a while ago that was saying that the footage was mistakenly erased.
Look, I mean, goes back to the same, ask the people that were in power then. I mean, I get it that you want to hold me to account for their actions. And
no, I'm not saying,
not you.
I'm not saying that.
Not you, just the public in general, and that's okay.
What's confusing to everybody today, first of all, it's very confusing because AI can kind of make anything.
Okay, we'll just stop here because that kind of just deviates into a whole other thing. But look, this is classic. This is classic statism. This is classic government, right? Take the blame off me. It's not my fault. It's above my pay grade. I still profit from the same system. I still take money from the same system, but it's not my fault. It's not my fault. It wasn't me. Well, you know what, man? If you are going to be in this position, if you're going to be the one that's like supposedly streamlining all this information to the public, you should maybe at least take some kind of part. Maybe not even. Let's even say like maybe he shouldn't take any blame. Let's say it is entirely the previous administration's fault. You better do damn well to do everything you can. And I mean everything you can to be as transparent as possible, to have explanations for these things. Do investigations. That's your fucking job. Hey, maybe instead of focusing on this fucking fentanyl crisis and throwing fucking darts against the wall, trying to solve this unsolvable problem, like in the way of the drug war and all that, maybe instead of trying to solve this unsolvable problem of the drug war, maybe you should focus your energy on something that could actually be of a lot of benefit, that could actually help a lot of people. Hey, maybe instead of trying to like just target these like fucking cartel people or people who just happen to be selling and using drugs in a mutual exchange, a peaceful manner, and then they happen to have fentanyl in it, and like that's not, they don't know that, right? Maybe they do, whatever. Like, it's bad, but I would be willing to bet, I would be willing to say that uncovering what happened with this awful person, Jeff Epstein, who had a web of influential people, government officials, had all these, extremely coincidental, things that like him getting promoted to, what was it, like some MIT position with like no expert, like he just had all of these gateways into government and power and all that. Even like with Ghislaine Maxwell's father, like his relationship with that, like there's so many like things that raise eyebrows that you could actually spend a lot of time revealing that. But no, you're going to like focus on the fentanyl crisis. Like, nah, man, sure. Let's say it's not your fault. You better be doing everything you fucking can to have answers for this. And not just say, we'll give it to you, we'll give it to you, we'll give it to you. Why even come on this podcast if you have nothing to give? Right? Like, wouldn't it make way more sense to appear like, oh, hey, I have the footage. Hey, Joe, why don't you pull up the footage? Or maybe even you put it out publicly and then you have the interview. Look, I think the reason that he came right now is because this is all he's going to give us. I don't think, look, I'm just going to say right now, I'm just going to predict right now, I don't think he's ever going to give us this footage. And if it does, I don't think it's going to be real. That's just my take. Okay, let's move on. Got one more thing I want to talk about today. It's pretty big news. I feel like I might as well at least touch on it. The LA ICE riots. I don't live in LA, so I don't really care that much about it. I feel like the George Floyd thing was interesting because like every city was rioting. Like I knew people in Iowa who were like fucking going into the protests, like some of them armed, right? Like that was something that was happening at home. This is happening in a shithole. Okay. If like the Haitians are rioting, I don't really care that much. I guess this isn't America, but like it's happening in a shithole. So like how much do I really care, right? But I thought I'd at least comment on it because, it especially from me being in the generation of the George Floyd stuff, I think it's interesting to talk about. So let's just read this article from KTLA. ICE protest turns violent in downtown LA. Local officials blame Trump. Protests over President Donald Trump's immigration crackdown and the deployment of the National Guard boiled over in the streets of Los Angeles on Sunday as demonstrators blocked the 101 freeway and surface streets, set cars ablaze, and lobbed projectiles at law enforcement. Police responded with tear gas, rubber bullets, and flashbangs to disperse the escalated crowds, as they usually do. Okay, so this is from the LAPD. This quote's from the LAPD. The use of less lethal munitions has been authorized. Arrests are being made. Okay. I mean, there are a couple different things to take away from this. I think, first of all, I think this is something that, my good friend, Marco Italia, posted on his Twitter or in his Facebook, how it's interesting how the news has kind of diverted. Like, I think there were like 20 arrests and 2 injured or something. I don't remember what the stats was that he posted, but it's like, that's a pretty, like, compared to the things that happened in Gaza, like that's a pretty low number, right? So, I mean, I think he was pointing to like where the media decides to turn its head, right? Like, and that's talk about George Floyd. I mean, that's always the case. That's like the media always plays such a huge role in where these things actually go to, like where they, like what happens, right? A big part of that is what the media plays, or shows you, I should say. I guess here's the thing, I'm not pro deportation. I think the people who are protesting actually do, not in the actions that they're taking. But initially I think they do have a pretty good case where it's like, these are people who, it'd be one thing if I can wrap my head around the idea if they were like only targeting people who were violent or criminals or whatever. Like I can like wrap my head around that idea. I can be like, okay, that's fine, whatever, right? Like those people should be extradited from society anyway, so like fine, whatever. But like when you're going into workplaces where people are just happen to be illegals, like, but they're doing the same thing that, anybody else, like, any other worker would do, right? But like, you're just going to arrest them because they don't have a card or they don't have papers or whatever, right? Like, yeah, I think that's kind of fucked up. And honestly, it does kind of fuck up the economy a little bit, right? Like you have, like a business, even if they're like, quote unquote, taking advantage of illegals or whatever, right? Like there's still a mutual exchange there's still an agreed upon thing. And, you know, what might be not a lot of money to someone could be a lot of money to other people. So I think that's kind of, you know, that's kind of speculative as to like what is a lot and what isn't, right? But I mean, there's dollar amounts, but like in terms of like what that's worth per person, right? I think that's speculative. But anyways, I think there's a big problem when you have that happening. One video that I saw that I thought was actually really great is something that happened in San Francisco where there was ICE people going into a community, and the community, I mean, everybody got together in a group and started shouting. From what I saw in the video, there weren't any like projectiles, there weren't any weapons. I mean, it's San Francisco, so they probably don't, if they had weapons, they'd probably get arrested, right? But regardless, I mean, it wasn't violent. It wasn't a violent protest. It was simply showing up in numbers and, you know, saying, hey, we don't want you here. And then they left. And like, it's almost like the idea of like, if you're in a confrontation and you just show that you have a gun, like that de-escalates so many situations a lot of times. And it was kind of that same thing, right? And I was like, okay, this is actually like a really good example of an actual peaceful protest, right? Like actually getting things done in your community without violence. Like I thought that was really great. And then like a couple days later, this thing happens in LA, right? And from what I understand, how this started is ICE was, you know, doing their sweeps. There were a lot of incidents of them going into workplaces, rounding up illegals. And a lot of people in the community were fed up with it. And so they started creating human blockades in public streets, highways, etc., which then prompted police to come. They started attacking police. And then eventually Trump brought in the National Guard, which I heard this today. Apparently, this is the first time that the National Guard has been sent into a state against the wishes of the government, of the local government, since the LA riots of 91, 92, I think. So that's historically significant in a sense, right? Maybe before I was a kid. I mean, I'm fucking turning 30, man. It was a long ass time ago. But you know, I guess I have a variety of thoughts when it comes to this. First of all, similarly, actually, I'll say this before I even start. I think this is like seeing something like this. Like I'm sure there are people in their mind that like look at the videos and the images and just think this is anarchy. And like I can't help but think like as the anarchist, like, you know, in an actual anarcho-capitalist society where people own property, this wouldn't ever happen. Like, let's think where this started. This started on public roads, and then you had the police come in, and that just incited everything, right? If things were privatized, like if people went on private property and started doing this, they would get shot, right? And rightfully so. Like, no, you can't just go on somebody's yard and start protesting without expecting any consequences to come to you, right? Like, so it's always just funny to me how like people will like look at this and be like, anarchy, this is anarchy, and I'm like, this would never, not that this would never happen, but is so, like you would have way more guardrails that would take place before this would happen, right? So like that's just stupid. You know, people look at a burning car and they're like, this is anarchy. It's like, it's actually not. It's not at all. This is state collapse is what this is. But look, I don't think rioting or frankly even protesting, I just don't think it's good. I don't think it's helpful. I think me getting on this podcast and talking to the people is way more effective than me getting in a street and holding up a sign and just screaming with everybody else. Like, right. Like, I think it's like just the lowest. I mean, it's low IQ, and B, it's just like the lowest hanging fruit for like, oh, hey, like I want to make a change. It's like, okay, I'll just go do what everybody else is doing. Right. Like, I don't know. And you're doing it in a public space. Like, you're disrupting people who just want to fucking, go, like, they want to just drive to work. Like, they're just living a normal life. And then you just have all these, like, these people just disrupting shit. I mean, not to assume, but a lot of them are probably, they clearly don't have anything better to do, right? Like, those are the people who are usually there, right? I guess, like, ultimately it's just bad all around, right? It's bad that they blocked the streets. It's bad that the police came in, the LAPD came in, and then just started shooting people with rubber bullets and doing the thing that they always do in riots, right? Like, the reporter who got shot with a rubber bullet, like, thankfully she's okay. But, like, there could be a situation where those rubber bullets actually kill people. Like, I'm sure that's happened. Whether it's lethal or not, like, yeah, I think it's fucked up that the state comes in. Like, it's kind of the idea, like, two wrongs don't make it right? Like, if you have a war and you have, like, the good guys and the bad guys, that's not really the case. Like, really, in a way, they're like, unless, like, to the point where, like, if in this war scenario, right, like, if your country is getting invaded by another country, like, yeah, you're, like, if you retaliate to that, you're acting in self-defense. But then if that country were to then go into that country and start fucking shit up, like, yeah, you're not really, like, doing the moral thing anymore. Like, you're kind of just, you're doing the same thing that they were doing to you. So this is just bad all around. I think the fact that, I mean, to be fair, for now at least, it does seem like the National Guard is mostly just protecting federal property, which is okay, fine. I don't really care. It could burn to the ground for all I care, but, like, whatever, right? Like, I don't think, like, at least he's not, like, violently going into communities and, like, just doing what ICE would do, like, times 10, right? But, this also kind of brings me to, I should really know the guy's last name. Dave Smith and Alex something, who, it was a libertarian open borders debate. And weirdly enough, I found myself actually agreeing with Alex on a lot of points. Yeah, he was a little, like, too autistic, for lack of a better term, too autistic with it a little bit. But, like, I'm also autistic, so I was like, hey, I get it, man. I get where you come from. But, like, one of the points he made was, like, like, everything that ICE is doing to these illegal immigrants, they will do to you. And I think this is, I mean, not even is going to be a test. I think it is currently a test as to, like, how much power will the government, the federal government, or even the state government, take to do, like, at what point is the ICE gonna be detaining people who are illegals and then start detaining people or, deporting people who just disagree with what they're doing, right? I mean, we saw this with the like the Jewish protests, right? Like, the people, like, they deported, like, however many hundreds of people for anti-Semitism. Like, you're telling me that they couldn't just do that to people who are protesting in LA right now? Like, it could so easily happen. It could happen with the snap of a finger. All it takes is Trump to just go on True Social and say, like, hey, we're going to do this now, right? So, look, I guess ultimately at the end of the day, like, yeah, it's not happening in Iowa yet. I hope it doesn't. If anybody's listening to this, please don't go out and protest. Don't. It's stupid. You're not going to get anything done. If anything, you're just going to make your opinions and your quote unquote cause, you're just going to make it a little worse, right? If you don't like what's going on, do what I do. Start a podcast. Talk about it. Don't even start a podcast. Go on fucking Instagram Live and talk about it, right? That will do 10 times more benefit for what you believe than going onto a street, disrupting traffic, holding up a sign, and just waiting for a cop to shoot you with a rubber bullet. It's just stupid. All right, guys, we'll wrap up there. We're already going fucking late, man. Fucking late. Yeah, we'll get the multi-stream stuff figured out eventually. I might do a game stream later this week. I will for sure be doing a game stream for Friday the 13th, which is this Friday. I will for sure be doing that because I have the game.